Hello, Simmers, and welcome to Cork in the southern part of Ireland, where we are with the Inibuilds A300-600s. A beautiful add-on. I've had it in my virtual hangar for like 3 weeks. I wanted to do a video earlier, but seems like there's some sort of curse over me making a video on this airplane because every time I try to record it, something goes wrong, and that's not with the airplane or the add-on. But in terms of the recording, then it's the sound, and I forget to press the record button, and well, it's just quite stupid. But let's hope that this recording will work and that we can finally make this upload to YouTube, because this is a beautiful add-on that I really like. It's not perfect yet, but it comes very close to being perfect. And the airplane itself is beautiful. As you can see, the 3D modeling on this add-on is very nice. Really love the reflections, the physical based rendering, the PBR in the materials is very well implemented. And this livery is actually pretty cool, maybe a bit childish. The 007 livery. Watched the James Bond films since I was a little kid, so when I saw this one on the website, I had to download it, and I thought, well, this is gonna be the one for me to make the video with. So what we're gonna do today is take an in-depth look at the add-on, see what's in store for us, and we will do that by making a flight from Cork in, like I said, the southern part of Ireland, fly along the southeastern coast to the eastern the Irish Sea off the eastern coast of Dublin, then make a right-hand turn, fly towards East Midlands airports in the Midlands of the United Kingdom. Alternate for today will be Birmingham, and the expected flight time is roughly 1 hour 45 minutes. So let's just get to it. As you can see, we are on the apron in Cork, and there is nothing with this airplane right now. We are completely cold and dark, so let's start by bringing in some ground equipment. So when you take a look at the flight deck, let's do that first. You can see that this is a bit of a non-conventional Airbus flight deck. Non-conventional in the sense that there are actual yokes in front of the pilots, where of course the more modern Airbuses all have side sticks, and there's like this table that a pilot can fold or unfold to like put charts on it, a cup of coffee, maybe a meal. Anyway, there's much more space in front of the pilot in the modern Airbus flight decks. The A300 was in development by Airbus from, I thought, the early 1970s until 2007. So that's quite a long development time. There were numerous versions of the airplane, and the model that is replicated in the sim in this add-on, that's the A300-600, and that was first put into operational use in 1983. And I think that shows in the flight deck, given that airplanes like the Boeing 757 and the Boeing 767 are from roughly the same era. I think the flight decks are actually quite similar, with a mixture between analog gauges and digitalization, screens, a lot of automation, but still a lot of stuff that you have to do manual. The actual design of like the overhead panel looks already quite similar to the later Airbus versions in terms of the design and what it looks like. The big difference is, of course, that there are many analog gauges on the overhead panel that you will not see in any modern Airbus anymore. So it's an unconventional Airbus. If you have many hours on the A320 or the A319, then that's good for you, but they are, well, not completely worthless, but you really will have to learn to use this airplane, since there are some differences between this one and the more modern versions. Of course, the modern versions evolved from this platform. So let's just go on and take a closer look. In the flight deck, there is a basic EFB. electronic flight book. And the electronic flight book will give you certain options. You can run takeoff performance calculations. There are checklists implemented in here. You can adjust the load of the airplane. You can view the load sheet. You can also set ground surfaces. And then you can retrieve an ADIS unless you are using an add-on such as Active Sky, then it doesn't work. But if you don't use an add-on, when you press ADIS, you can derive the actual weather information from X-Plane 11. You can load and save certain panel states, and there are some other settings that you can choose between. A nice feature, I think, is that you can choose between the metric or the imperial system in terms of the weights, etc. You can choose for a fast or a given time for the alignment of the IRS. I always set it to real, but that's my preference. If you don't want to waste time, you can set it to instant, and that will save you a lot. I think it's nice that they give you the option to choose, so anyone can set it to their individual liking. There's also an option to link the standard button, to link flight directors, and to link the barometers. What does that mean? It means that if you adjust one on, for instance, the captain's side, it will automatically set the same value on the first officer's side. Now, I haven't done that with the flight directors, but I have done it with the standard and the barometers. Because, of course, when you set the altimeter in this gauge, in real life, you will have a first officer that will set it on his or her gauge. So in real life, you only have to look after your own instrument. So I think it makes it enhances the playability, and I think it's also it doesn't compromise the realism, since in the real airplane you're not bending over to this side to adjust the first officer's settings. So that's why I set it to on, but that's my personal liking. If you don't like it, if you like to set all the gauges individually, you have that option, which is always nice that you have something to choose from. Well, further, yeah, I think all the other settings, they speak for themselves, so I'm not going to waste too much time looking at them. It's nice you have certain things that you can set to your liking in the settings menu. But for now, let's start with powering up the airplane, load the flight plan, and get us out of here ASAP towards our destination airport of East Midlands Airport. So let's go to ground ops and start with ground services. We like external power. I want air stairs, I want a loader, I want chocks, I want an air conditioning unit, and I want a fuel truck right now. So now that we have selected that, when we take a look at the exterior, you can see that the doors are open, the loader is maneuvered into position, there's a truck with a number of cargo containers. As soon as this one is in place, it will drive up and you will actually see the containers slide on here, move up, and being pushed into the cargo bay. But we can also take a look at that procedure from the airplane, because the cabin is very nicely modeled in this add-on. Here's a panel where you can adjust some lights. You can open and close the cargo door manually if you like to do that. Let's just switch the interior lights on and walk outside. And there you can see the first container being lifted towards the airplane. The only thing that's missing is some ground stuff, but usually I think seeing computer animated personnel, well, they don't usually look that good in flight sims, so I'm not too, I don't think that's a big problem, not to me at least. So here's the container being pushed into the airplane. So nice animations, a lot of attention to detail in this add-on. You can continue to move, and also at the left-hand side of the main cargo door, you see the same operating panel that you have at the crew door. To show the attention to detail, they have also modeled the smallest room in the airplane. So if you need a toilet break, you can go for it. But anyway, let's walk back into the flight deck, close the door behind us, and start powering up this airplane. Now the external power is now available, but first we'll switch on the batteries. Then we'll select external power, set the nav lights on, and we can already arm the emergency exit lights. So what we'll do now is we'll take a look at the overhead panel, the IRS, the inertial reference system, that is located in 3 different panels in the aft overhead panel. It's 1, 2 and 3. Just move the switch to nav, wait for the battery operating light to extinguish, and then you can switch the other one to the on position, to the nav position. And when that one is ready, you can switch on the third one. Battery operating lights is now extinguished. That means that the IRS is in the position it will align itself. So let's open the McDo, clear the messages, and now we can start with our flight. So what we'll do is we'll fly from Cork to East Midlands, Echo Golf November X-ray. Our alternate today is Birmingham, Echo Golf Bravo Bravo. And we'll align the IRS. Cost index for our flight will be 50. Cruise flight level 350. And our flight number today is DHX, what was it? 517. So with this now set on the McDo, let's go back to the EFB and start loading the airplane according to our flight plan. So press return, go to load manager, and here you can set the fuel. So if we take a look at the flight plan, the fuel that we require for this flight is 11,150 kilos. So let's make that 11.2 in the total fuel. Let's make it 11.3 then. That's one of the things that I don't really like. The adjusting of the sliders is sometimes a bit inaccurate. Anyway, but that's not a really big deal. The cargo 16,736. So let's set the total freight to 16.4. Let's make it 16.5. Also, what I find a little bit confusing is when you look at the cargo, the total weight that you have to adjust is the lowest slider, and at fuel, the total fuel is the top slider. So yeah, I think it would make a lot more sense if you have both the sliders that you have to adjust in the same position, whether that's up or down. I don't care. But anyway, with these settings inserted, we are moved onwards towards the load sheet, and in the load sheet is some information that we use to further load the McDo. So as you can see, the initialization page, there's this little arrow to the right in the top right corner, so press next page to go to the next page, and we can see block, ZFW, TOGW and CG. Block, that is the fuel on board, or FOB, that's 11.2. The zero fuel weight is 105.9. And when you add these numbers, you will get 116. This is not entirely correct. Takeoff gross weight is 116.7. So we expect to burn like 400 kilos on taxiing. That should roughly be the... Yeah, and that's because this taxi figure here is set to 0.4. So the gross weight is the block fuel added up by the zero fuel weight. So that will give us 117.1 minus 0.4 makes 116.7 takeoff gross weight. So if you expect to burn more on taxiing, you should adjust this number. Now, our alternate fuel is set to 0.5. I don't really buy that because Birmingham will take us 2,958, so let's make that 3,000 kilos of fuel to reach our alternate. So set that to 3.0. And as far as the taxi fuel is concerned, well, I'm not really sure what the fuel consumption on taxiing will be. For our departure, we expect a runway 16. We are very close to that already, because if we take a look at the charts for Cork, we are here at the cargo apron, and this is runway 16, so it's basically pushback nose to the left, taxi out. So maybe 400 kilos is even quite a lot. Maybe we will burn even less, but we'll just have to wait and see what that will be like. Anyway, let's focus first on the McDo. So there's another figure, CG, center of gravity, that's 30.3%. So 30.3 in the center of gravity box here. So now we have all the boxes filled with the right data. So now we can go proceed with inserting the flight plan. Like I mentioned, from Cork we expect to depart runway 16, and we expect to use the VAPA 1 Quebec departure. Let's insert that one. So we fly towards Vapal. Now that is correct. From Vapal it's a direct to Whiskey Tango Delta. So select the left line selector key next to Vapal, and then you can insert the waypoint, which is Whiskey Tango Delta. Insert it in next waypoint, and then it is there. Then we had another direct to Liffey. And I think it's the 53 North 6 West. Let's just verify that to be absolutely certain. It's 53 North 005. Yeah. So that is the one. From Liffey we will then fly the Quebec 36. Now if you look at the Airways, that's slightly different than what you're used to in the more modern versions of the Airbus McDo. Select the waypoint and select Airway. That's still the same, but in the newer versions of the Airbus McDo you will get like a box where you can enter your own input. In this version you will get a list of the available airways at the last waypoint. Now what we saw is we have to use Quebec 36 towards Epoxy, so Quebec 36, and then in this list in alphabetical order are all the waypoints on the airway, so you just have to navigate until you find the one that you need, in our case Epoxy. And there it is. From Epoxy we will fly another airway, namely the Lima 15 to MPIT. So Lima 15 to MPIT. And that will be the entry point of our star into East Midlands Airport, which will be the MP1 Echo, and we expect to arrive on runway 27. So what we'll do is we'll press the left line selector key next to EGNX, select star, standard arrival route, go for the MP1 Echo for ILS runway 27, and we have a transition via, let's see if we have one. It should be a row cup, which is in here. So MP1 Echo via row cup to ILS 27. Insert. And once you have inserted the arrival route, you will be returned to the top of your flight plan, and then you move. Oh, the iris is aligned already. That's nice and quick. Then you move down through the flight plan to verify that there are no route discontinuities. There is one flight plan discontinuity. Just press clear, and select the line selector key next to the flight plan discontinuity. And then proceed downwards, see if there are no others. And this looks quite alright. So the flight plan is now inserted in the McDo. So the next little thing we have to do is calculate our takeoff performance and enter some numbers on the takeoff approach page. So what you'll do, from the load sheet you can press send to takeoff performance, and once you are there you can select FMC data. If you press this button, all the fields in this screen that can be filled with data that's already been inserted in the McDo will be visible on screen. So if I do that, you can see that the ICAO code for the departure airport is Echo India Charlie Kilo, which is correct. We selected runway 16 for takeoff, which is correct. It has an elevation of 500 feet, and well, there's some information on the length of the runway available for takeoff. The takeoff gross weight was 116.7, that was correct. The conditions in terms of the weather are quite nice. It is dry, we don't expect to use any anti-ice. We can probably make a takeoff using slats 15 flaps 0. The air conditioning will be on and we will be using a flex temperature. Now we have to fill the boxes here, and to do that I have to obtain ATIS information. I'm using Active Sky XP, so I have to listen to the ATIS on the radio. If you don't use any add-on, you can just select ATIS request. It will derive the ATIS information from X-Plane and fill the boxes here automatically. But well, like I said, we don't have that luxury. We have to listen to Active Sky. So let's select the frequency 122.0. Select VHF 1. Make sure that this light is illuminated, and then make it the head frequency and listen to the inputs. Now if you want to input anything in here, simply hover the cursor over it, click your left mouse button, enter the information with the keyboard, and then press enter to be returned to your mouse cursor.
Echo India Charlie Kilo airport information India 0800 Zulu weather wind 262 at 11 visibility 10,000 sky condition few clouds at 2,200 ceiling 5,000 broken temperature 13 dew point 9er QNH 1025 advise on initial contact. You have information India.
Alright, so we have information India on board. The wind 262 at 11
Echo
knots. Which will make for a crosswind takeoff. Temperature is 13 degrees Celsius, and the QNH 1025 hectopascals. So what we can do already is set the 1025 on the barometer, and since I have selected that the barometers are linked, you can see that the standby instrument and the first officer's gauge are also adjusted with my input on the captain's side. So 1025 is now set on all available gauges. Now with this information in the EFB, we can press the compute button, and then it will show us the takeoff, the V speeds, etc. in this box. Now it says no takeoff data because we have to use a higher flap setting. So what we'll do is we'll use slats 15 and flaps 20 for takeoff. The runway is a little bit shorter, so we need to take off with a higher flap setting. So with higher flap settings the V speeds will be lower, so you need less runway to reach those V speeds. So we have a V1 and a V rotate of 135. Now the V2 is 139. If I try to enter that in here, I will get a message saying it's not allowed. Now that is correct. In brackets behind V2 stands FCU, that's Flight Control Unit. And that is for you Boeing pilots the same thing as the mode control panel, which is this one down here. So we have to set it in the speed window. Right now I cannot do that because I haven't switched that system to the on position, so switch these knobs to on, and that will power some of the flight systems on screen. Now if I set my V2, which was 139, I can set that here in the speed window, and then you can see it's also moving up here on the V2 in the FCU, in the McDo. So 139 is set. When I take a look at my departure chart, I can see that my initial climb clearance will be 5,000 feet. So I can set 5,000 in the altitude window. And my initial climb will be on heading of 164. So I'll set 164 in the heading select window. There we are. Now in the McDo, I can see the flap retraction speed is 163. I can see that the slat retraction speed is 191. We have to be clean at 200 knots. There's no shifted takeoff for me. That means that if you take a look at the airport chart, suppose I'm not departing from Alpha but from Charlie, I can insert a shift in here, telling the computer that I am using taxiway Charlie. And if I do that, of course there's less runway because I missed this piece of the runway, so I have less runway length for my takeoff, which is of course vital information for deriving the correct V speeds and flap settings for your takeoff. So thrust reduction altitude is 2,000 feet, acceleration height is 2,000 feet, engine out acceleration 1,000 feet, and engine out thrust reduction is also 1,000 feet. Now I'm not happy with these settings. Why not? These are barometric altitudes, they are not radio altitudes, and given that the airport itself is already at 520 feet barometric altitude, that means that my engine out acceleration altitude will be only 480 feet above ground. That is not convenient for me. So what I will do is I will add up 500 feet to these numbers, set thrust reduction speed to 2,500, acceleration height 2,500, engine out acceleration height 1,500, and engine out thrust reduction also 1,500. So let's do just that. And now I have the takeoff page set to my liking. I will, if I take off and there is one engine that's flamed out or maybe on fire, anyway I have to shut down one engine. I will be 1,000 feet above ground before I start to reduce, or the autopilot system, auto throttle system starts to reduce power. So with the takeoff page set, the flight plan loaded, let's set the flight plan to the first officer side. We can now proceed with preparing ourselves for our departure. So what we'll do first is perform an overhead flow. So we'll start bottom left and move down. All these lights, they will be extinguished once we started the engines, so there's nothing we have to do here. I will set the electric hydraulic pumps on. In terms of the calls, there's nothing to do. The lights are okay. Signs, let's set the seatbelt and no smoking signs on, just in case we have people riding in the back with us. Then on the external lights, the nav lights are already on. The systems here are on. Galley power, I can switch that one right now. External power is still set. Don't have to do anything here. So what we do now is we'll perform the loop tests on the fire indications for all three handles. So we'll start with engine number 1. Press and hold the button for like 1 or 2 seconds. Release. Loop alpha, loop bravo. And then you press and hold until the light here is illuminated and you hear the fire warning. That's working. And we will do the same thing for the APU, but then we'll just press and hold it immediately. So loop alpha, fire warning, release, loop bravo, wait for the ding and wait for the light to extinguish. And then we'll do the same thing for engine number 2. So loop alpha, hold, and then fire warning, loop bravo, extinguished. The agent lights are also extinguished. But anyway, this one is already set. The landing gear, there's nothing to do with this. VHF, there's nothing to do. This was checked. The reading light can remain off. Fuel, we have to switch the fuel pumps on. We can verify the fuel quantity that's on board. So this is 6, 7.2, 8, 9.2, 10.1, that's yeah, 11.2, that's about right. So the fuel is loaded. Engines, this is the starter panel. We will come back to that later. I can start the APU, however, so switch the APU to on. Wait a couple of seconds and then press the APU start button. The wipers are off, they are not required, it's not raining. The auto pressurization, just set it to auto, don't do anything on this panel. You'll be fine. The window heater, switch those on. By probe heaters, I will switch those on after the engine start. Cargo compartment smoke detectors, they are switched on, as well as the main deck cargo smoke detectors. And we can do the loop test, as well as here. Fence, alright, the cockpit door can be locked. And compartment temperatures, well, you can leave them to auto. I usually set them 2 clicks to the left. So they're on the first, roughly the first knob to the left of auto. That will give a temperature of roughly 21 degrees, which is quite comfortable. The air, that's all fine. The bleed air, we can switch the APU bleed on. And you can see the pressure rising in that system now. Then finally we can do the annunciator light test. So if I move this switch to the test position, I get all the warnings. I can check all the light bulbs in all the switches to see if there's nothing broken. And I will do the same thing from this view. So that is okay. So basically we are approaching the point where we are ready to push back. We have to do 2 things. We have to set our flex temperature and we have to set our takeoff trim. So let's start with the flex temperature. You have to set that in this little panel. Once you started the airplane, it will automatically be in the toga position, but we want to be in the flex takeoff position, so press flex TO. And then you can adjust the temperature with this little knob here. And we have 48 degrees. So the takeoff EPR will be 1.446. Verify 48 is correct. And the takeoff trim is 1.3 down. So what you'll do is you'll take a look in here. This is the trim wheel. Next to the trim wheel there are numbers with up and down. We need 1.3 down. So you just trim until you have the desired value at this little black triangle. So 1 and then roughly 1/3. This should do the trick. So with all that said and done, time to take a look at the doors. Now the loading is complete. And once the containers are in, they will automatically close the main cargo door. We have the APU running and on the buses, so what we can do is switch off the external power. We can get rid of the ground equipment and we can call the pushback tug. So what you do in the EFB, go back to ground ops and go back to ground services. First thing, switch off the external power. And then you can dismiss the external power, dismiss the air stairs, Dismiss the loader, dismiss the fuel truck, dismiss the air conditioning units, remove the chocks and select pushback. And then you get a menu where you can press one of the buttons and you are automatically routed towards a better pushback. So pre-plan.
Ground to cockpit, please show me where you want to go.
Well, not there. I want to go here.
Ground to cockpit, tow is driving up.
Alright, so the tow is driving up. Let's switch the beacon light to the on position and already set the ignition to either system Alpha or Bravo. I'll use Bravo today. And here you can see that we are clear of all the ground equipment. We have the beacon lights on. And there's our pushback tuck approaching the airplane. So let's take another look at the departure chart. We have the Vapol 1 Quebec.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed, ready to connect.
So 164, and then it's a left turn towards Vapol quite shortly after our takeoff. And maximum speed is 250 knots below 10,000. Transition altitude is 5,000 feet. Airport elevation is 502. So it's slightly higher in here. Let's leave it at that.
Tow connected and bypass been inserted. Release parking brake.
Okay, so here we go. Brakes released, clear to push.
Starting pushback, and you may start engine.
Roger, starting sequence, first 2, then 1. Alright, so if you want to start the engines, make sure that the ignition switch is set to either Alpha or Bravo, and then you just press the start button in here. This airplane is equipped with Pratt & Whitney engines, so what we'll do is we'll press the starter. You will see N2 come online, and we have to wait until N2 reaches roughly 24 before we start opening the fuel flow. The startup sequence in this Airbus is much more similar to that of a Boeing, like a 737 or a 75 or 767, than a modern Airbus. But like I said in the beginning of the video, with this model being first put into service in 1983, the technology is very similar to the 757 and 767. And listen to those engine sounds. And look at the animations. So let's take a look. We are now at 23. And 24, so open the fuel flow. And take a look at the spinner on the cone in the engine. It's very nicely animated on the power-up sequence, the starting sequence. And now we have engine number 2 stable and started. So let's start number 1, same drill. Press the start button, wait for N2 to reach 24. And the sound set that comes with this airplane is really, really nice.
Operation complete. Set parking brake.
Brakes set. Clear to disconnect.
Disconnecting tow. Stand by.
And with the N2 reaching 24, start the fuel flow on engine number 1 as well.
Disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal on the right. I'll see you next time and have a safe flight.
Thanks for your help. See you next time. Bye bye. Alright. So engine number 1 is stabilizing. Roughly there. Clear signal is received. Engine is stabilized. So let's take a look at the overhead. The ignition, let's set it to continue relight for takeoff. The APU bleed can be switched off. The APU master can be switched off. We can set the probe heaters to on. Electric hydraulic pump, let's make sure the light is out. And we are happy. Set our flaps for the takeoff, which was 1520. Now the flap indicator gauge, that is this one, and it's split into two. On the left side you have the slat setting, and on the right side you have the flaps setting. So if I press my flaps once, that will only slide the slats to 15. If I select the second position, it will also set flaps to 15. If I set the third position, it will set slats 15, flaps 20. And the final selection that I can make but won't do right now is the fourth position, which is slats 30 and flaps 40. But we have selected slats 15, flaps 20 for takeoff, so that's now set correct. We will select auto brakes max for the rejected takeoff. We will then select the flight control page in here. And we will perform the flight control check. So ailerons full left, full right, neutral, elevator, full down, full up, neutral, and the rudder, full left, full right, neutral. So flight control check is completed. Select it once again and it will set it automatically to the correct view for the phase of flight that we're currently in. We will arm the spoilers and let's take a look at the checklists. So after start, pitch trim is set, rudder trim is 0, spoilers are armed, slats 15, flaps 20, ECAM status checked, NTIs not required, hand signal is received. Before takeoff checklist, flight controls are checked, the briefing is confirmed, slats and flaps 15, 20 set and checked. Performance is checked, TO config is checked, transponder is set, cabin is secure, TCAS, let's set that to TARA. PEX as required, ignition as required, and the NTIs is as required. So that's the before takeoff checklist completed. Let's set the runway turn-off lights on, the nose gear light to taxi. We can release the parking brake and start our taxi to runway 16, which will be a very short taxi. Now, since we are already at the runway, let's switch the strobe light on. And line up and wait runway 16.
On runway 16.
Here we are. Alright, so on the runway, let's switch the landing lights on. Nose gear light to take off. And we are good to go. So what we'll do is we'll spool up the engine slightly. There is a hidden click spot in the lower left screw on the FCU. If you select that one, that will set the auto throttle system to take off. And let's see, auto brakes are on max. And once the engines are spooling up, we will set the chronometer running. So let's first run up the engines. That's nice and equal. Start the chronometer and take off thrust. Airspeed active. $80 knots. Thrust set. V1 rotates. Positive rate, gear up. And here we are in the skies over beautiful Ireland. Okay, runway turn-off lights and nose gear light can be switched off. The gear is up. To select the gear off, just hover your cursor over till you get the index finger. Select your left mouse button once and that will put it in the off position. Let us turn left here. Okay, flaps 15. Flaps up. Thrust reduction. Trim the nose up slightly. And let's put the airplane in a shallow turn to the right to bring us on back onto the flight plan. 5,000 feet coming up. Let's switch the autopilot on, select nav, and why can't I select profile? Let's say that we're clear to climb flight level 350. I couldn't select profile because I was already at the altitude set in the altitude window. That seems logical. It was in altitude hold mode. So flight level 350 is set. We'll follow the navigation and the profile, that's basically VNAV. We can set the ignition switch to off. And with the weather being quite calm, let's switch the seatbelt signs off. Not that it is of any use in a cargo plane, but let's do the after takeoff checks. Slats and flaps are retracted. Not yet. Let's retract the slats. There we are. The landing gear is up and neutral. Pegs are on altimeters. They can go to the standard position where they are right now. That's the climb checklist completed. 3 minutes in the flight, already at 9,000 feet. This airplane really climbs like a homesick angel. It's 2 powerful engines. And the cargo is not, we don't have too much weight on board. So passing 10,000 feet, landing lights off. And the airplane should start to accelerate, which it does. Clouds, Sky and Weather by Active Sky XP. And the scenery that you're looking at in terms of the land, that is standard X-plane, and the Cork scenery that was freeware. I downloaded that from the xplane.org forum. So if you Google for Echo India Charlie Kilo scenery X-plane 11, you will get to a download page. Now it says total air temperature in frequent icing range. We have visible moisture, so what we will do is set the engine and wing anti-ice on. And what I will do is I'll continue the climb and the flight, and I'm back with you guys as soon as we are ready for our approach into East Midlands Airport. So see you in a bit for the descent preparation. So welcome back. We are just reaching our top of climb and we are already 50 nautical miles before our top of descent. So it's time to take a look at our approach preparations for East Midlands. Now, like I said in the beginning of the video, we expect to arrive runway 27 via the MPI 1 Echo arrival procedure. So let's take a look at the chart for the standard arrival route. Ampit, Nokin, Nugra, Vigar, Trent VOR, Dipso, Rokup, and from there on we will make another 180-degree right-hand turn that will bring us onto the final approach for runway 27. What is important for us to know is that we will have to set our ILS to what looks like 109.35 and a course of 269er. So let's start with doing that. And you do that in here, this small panel with ILS. So 109.35. And the course was 269. Let's take a look at our flight plan. So the first waypoint Nokin, then Nugra. Nokin, Nugra, Vigar, Trent. Vigar, Trent, Dipso, Rokup. Dipso and Rokup. Yes, that's it. And what is also important for us to know is when we take a look at our approach chart, we have to be at 2,000 feet to intercept the glide slope, and that will be at 5.2 miles out. So let's take a look what's in here in terms of the altitude. Rokup to 5,000. Delta 115 X-ray 2880. Don't know if I'm too happy with it. There's not a very clear position. So what I think I'll do is I'll start to switch from the profile back to a flight level change, etc., to bring us on the final approach. What I encountered on most of my flights on various add-ons towards East Midlands is that if you let the automation run the arrival route, you will end up high and fast on your final approach, and the final approach is short. So you really have to be at 2,000 feet and already slow down quite significantly before you start the descent on the glide slope, which is also quite, I think it's quite steep. Let's see if we can find a slope percentage. We have to set the minimums to 200 feet. Let's do that first. So what you do is in here select DH, decision height, and dial in 200. And we'll do the same thing on the first officer side. And let's listen to an ATIS for East Midlands.
Echo Golf November X-ray airport information November 0850 Zulu weather wind 250 at 14 visibility 10,000 sky condition ceiling 2,400 broken temperature 13 dew point 8 QNH 1020 advise on initial contact. You have information November.
Alright, information November. I wasn't paying attention, so let's listen to it again.
Golf November X-ray airport information November 0850 Zulu weather wind 250 at 14 visibility 10,000 sky condition ceiling 2,400 broken temperature 13 dew point 8 QNH 1020 advise on initial contact. You have information November.
Alright, 1020 on the QNH, the wind 250 at 14, so we'll remain to our plan of landing on runway 27 with a slight 20-degree crosswind coming in from the left. So top of descent is now approaching, so let's lower this and let's say that we are clear to descend to fly level 100 initially. And what we can also do is take a look at the transition altitude. That's 6,000 feet in East Midlands. So in the McDo, let's take a look at the takeoff approach page. We expect to land sleds 30, flaps 40, giving us an approach speed of 134. Wind correction of 5 knots. Well, let's make that 10 because the wind was roughly 14. So approach speed 139. And our minimum descent altitude, well, we can basically leave that open. We are on an ILS approach. And right now we can see that the autopilot is closing the thrust levers and the descent is initiated. So with the ILS course and frequency set, the meter obtained, let's set the auto brakes to low, because in East Midlands we will land on runway 27 and the cargo area is at the end of the runway, so I'll set auto brakes to low. And basically what I will do is I'll use idle reverse and let the airplane roll out as far as possible. So that saves us a lot of taxi time. If we, for instance, make an emergency stop and we vacate at Sierra, then we have to taxi all the way down here. If you just let it roll out of the runway and we vacate at Hotel or Golf, that's a much shorter taxi time for us. So that's what I will be aiming for with my landing in East Midlands Airport. Anyway, the descent is initiated, the approach is prepared. So what I'll do is I'll continue the flight and I'm back with you guys when we are well into the approach into East Midlands. So I'll see you in a bit. So welcome back. We are now very close to East Midlands Airport. I've inserted a holding point, so let's see if it will pick up that on the flight management computer. Let's just jump back into the flight deck and start to take a look. There's the row cup. That's where I inserted the hold. So let's just see how the airplane behaves. We should be at 8,000 feet over at row cup. And as soon as we start the holding pattern, I want to descend further to 4,000 feet before I proceed to the ILS for runway 27. So let's first descend to 6,000. Let's listen to the ATIS once more.
Echo Golf November X-ray airport information Papa 0920 Zulu weather wind 250 at 15 visibility 10,000 sky condition ceiling 2,400 broken temperature 13 dew point 8 QNH 1020 advise on initial contact. You have information Papa.
So information Papa on boards. And QNH 1020 is set. We are now descending to 6,000. Let's make that 4,000 feet on the QNH of 1020. Spoilers are armed, auto brakes low. Speed limit exceeded, that should be 230. Now I was told it's to make a right hand hold, so now it is turning right. Outside air temperature is 0, so we just leave the engine and wing anti-ice on, given all the visible moisture in the air. Seems like autumn is approaching rapidly in Western Europe. Given the fact that we had a heat wave like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And right now temperatures are 13 degrees Celsius. So here is that holding on the nav display. So that should give us plenty of time to descend to 4,000 feet before we proceed to the ILS. And of course, at the ILS we have to be at 2,000 feet. So let's just continue the descent to 3,000. As you can see right here, we are nicely in the holding, just as it is depicted on the chart. Slightly wide. Oh, don't need to go to Google. But that doesn't really matter. And here we are surfing the clouds in our holding pattern to descend further for a final approach to runway 27 here in East Midlands Airport. I really love the way Active Sky XP is depicting the clouds here. Flying in this holding will increase the flying time. I think we will be at roughly 1 hour when we land, another 10 minutes probably. So we have descended from 8,000 feet to 3,000 feet in the holding. Final turn towards Rokup, and from Rokup we will then proceed direct to the Delta 023 Delta, being the next waypoint for our final stage of this flight towards runway 27. So what I'll do is I'll wind the altitude select in the altitude window down to 2000. So let's reduce the speed to 220 knots and make it a direct to that one, and select insert in the top right corner. That will have the airplane proceed. And I think once we have passed this waypoint, I will switch over to heading select and vector the airplane to a final approach for runway 27. So let's make vertical speed of minus 500 feet per minute Make that 700 feet per minute. So we'll start our descent to 2000 feet, nice and easy. So Delta 106 Kilo is next. Should be able to make that one. And we are below the clouds. Air temperature is +9. Let's switch off the NTIs. Let's set the ignition to continuous. And we should be coming up on the left-hand turn back on the flight plan any second now. And as soon as we are on this leg, I will reduce the speed to 200 knots and extend the first stage of sleds. There we go, so reduce the speed. And set sleds 15. And once we reach Delta 115 X-ray, we'll start to reduce speed to 180. Maybe I want to be at 180 once we are over that waypoint, so we make a right-hand turn quite slowly and then on the ILS. The airplane responds quite nicely to the speed commands. It can decelerate or accelerate quite rapidly. But let's first run the approach checklist. Signs are set, briefing is confirmed, ECAM status checked, altimeters 1020 set and cross-checked. Minimums 200 is set, ignition is continuous, a landing elevation is not yet set. What is the landing elevation? That's 300 feet. So landing elevation is set. Alright, let's start to reduce speed to 180. Set flaps 15. So what I'll do now is I'll select ILS on this one, also on that one, switch this one to ARC, not yet identified. And right now we have a identified ILS. Now once we are over Delta 115 X-ray and we start our right hand turn, I will start to reduce the speed to 160. Set flaps 20 and engage the landing mode. Here we go. Landing mode is engaged. Select flaps 20. My approach speed will be 137 knots. Landing mode is armed. So we should be turning in any second now. Let's reduce the speed further to 137 and set sleds to 30 and flaps to 40. And let's set the landing gear down. That was the warning that we just received. Nose gear light, takeoff, runway turn off lights on. And there's the runway. We are a bit early with setting us up for real final. We are 7.7 miles out. Usually I lower the gear roughly 1 mile further down the road at 6.5. But well, we are stabilized, that's the most important thing. A little bit too early. Of course this costs a lot of drag and does fuel. And the airlines don't really like that. Let's just take a quick look at the missed approach altitude. That will be 3,000 feet. So as soon as the glide slope is established, we have to set the altitude window to 3,000. So localizer is green. The wind is 280 at 18. At the ground it was roughly 250, so it will shift further to the left along the final stages of the flight. Glide slope is alive. And glide slope captured and green. So let's set the missed approach altitude 3,000 feet. And let's set the missed approach heading 269. Alright, so we are stabilized, missed approach heading and altitude set, exterior lights are on, starters continuous, gear is down locked, 3 green, auto brakes low, spoilers armed. So that's the landing checklist completed. Flaps, slats 30, flaps 40. So with all that said and done, the landing checklist completed. Let's start takeover control manually. Now first thing you have to do is always make sure that you adjust your physical throttles on your throttle quadrant to the position of the throttles in the sim. If you don't do that, you will either get a full power or a idle power once you disengage the auto throttle, and that will really screw up your approach. So auto throttle disengaged, autopilot disengaged. Silence the alarm by pressing the red knob on the yoke. And here we are.
Approaching 27.
Check 27 is verified and correct. We are slightly low, correcting. We are drifting to the right, correcting. We are on the glide slope, so slightly reduced power, get back to that 600-700 feet per minute rate of descent. Aim for the end of the runway, the low end. And at 100 feet, shift your eyes from this part of the runway to the end of the runway. Minimums, so landing, continue. 100 feet.
10, 5.
And here we are. Idle reverse. And let's disengage the auto brakes. Manual braking. And let's just roller all the way down to the end.
4,000 feet remaining.
Scenery is, by the way, UK 2000.
remaining.
And manual braking. Let's vacate over here. Set this one back to nav. Start the APU. And retract slats and flaps. Landing lights off. Nose gear light, taxi. Transponder to TA only. And taxi into the cargo apron here in East Midlands Airport. And of course we can switch the chronometer off. So slightly longer than the flight plan expected because of the holding to descend further. If we were to continue from 8,000 feet at this position, then we would never have made it safely. So let's switch off the runway turn-off lights and the nose gear lights and turn in for stand 121 down here. Oh, the spoilers must be retracted and the strobe lights can be switched off, of course. And here we are, parking brakes set. Let's take a quick look at that landing from the outside. I'm actually quite happy with the approach. It was too low for too long, but I think we made a very gentle touchdown. Recovered very nicely. Idle reverse. Should have maintained better center line after touchdown. Yeah, I think this was nice and gently. But anyway, now there's one little glitch that I found. If you land and you retract your flaps and spoilers and your slats, you taxi to a parking position and then you take another look at your landing. Once you get out of the replay mode back into the sim mode, the flaps will remain in the lower position. You first have to lower them in the flight deck again. Wait for the white lines to follow up on the actual position and then retract them again before they are retracted. So there's a little bug, but nothing too serious. Doesn't affect the flying in anything anyway. So now they're fully extended, and now when I retract them and I look from the outside, they will be retracted again. So we'll just wait for them to fully retract. And now we will switch off the engines. Let's set the brake fan on because the brakes are hot. Engines are shut down. Set the APU bleed on. Beacon light can be switched off. Ignition can be switched off. Seatbelt signs are off. Did we miss anything? After landing, sled flaps retractor transponder that can be switched to standby. Weather radar is off, spoilers disarmed, APU started, APU bleed is on, engines off. Difference pressure is checked 0, lights and signs as required, fuel pumps, they can be switched off as well as the window heat. And the probe heaters. So there we are, and let's call some ground equipment. External power, chocks, air stairs, another loader, and the air conditioning units. And with the external power engaged, let's switch off the APU and the APU bleeds. Nav lights can remain on. And the smoke detectors can be switched off. Having performed all these steps, I welcome you in East Midlands Airport with the Inibuilds A300-600F. A lovely add-on, very nice. It costs a lot of money, including VAT. I paid either 91 or 94 euros, but I think it was worth it. This is a very nice add-on. So far it's only the freighter version, the passenger version is on the way. And as soon as that is released, you have a beautiful package for both passenger and cargo flying with a out-of-the-box Airbus, one of the earlier versions of this airplane. I really like this add-on. Both the 3D modeling and the system depths are done to an outstanding degree, and I can wholeheartedly recommend this add-on. I'm sure you will have many hours of fun with this one, as long as it's within your budget, because the price tag, that's the only downside, but like I said, I think it's worth the money. So on those notes, I will end this video. As usual, if you saw me make mistakes, please point them out to me in the comment section. Please do so in a respectful manner. And I hope to see you all again another day on another video. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.